Hi, I'm Dr. Will Horton, and on this week's NFNLP members video, I'm going to talk a little bit about failure, why people fail. You know, a lot of people in our field, in NLP, hypnosis, and in the whole development field, say they study success, which is wonderful. A lot of us study success. But if you've studied success and you haven't reached that level of success yet, maybe one of the reasons is you haven't also stopped and looked at why do people fail. You can look at why do people succeed. You know, maybe they follow through more, maybe they have more desire, drive, and discipline, which we'll talk about. Maybe they found their passion, whatever it happens to be. But what causes people to fail, especially good-hearted people, especially in our field? Well, I'm talking about a specific success ratio here, and it's being a clinician as an NLP or a hypnotist or a therapist. What seems to be some of those reasons that people don't succeed? I don't like to use the term failure, but it sets them back. Well, a few weeks ago, I talked about wide rapport versus deep rapport. And this is one of the first levels where people have problems. Because, you know, wide rapport is where you just get along. You mirror and you match, you have some generalities, you have a light level of rapport, then you can influence them subconsciously much easier. But deep rapport is when you go down to the next level and you have that kind of rapport that, you know, is very specific, like, you know, army buddies or people in 12-step programs, some deep level of rapport. You have a deep, usually a rapport at the level of values and beliefs. And sometimes we make the mistake of thinking our clients, who we have wide rapport with, we get along well, they, you know, we're influencing them. They're also influencing us. It's called countertransference, as we all know. But we begin to mistake that they have the same level of deep rapport that we do, that they want some of the same things, right? Which can hold you back greatly, which leads to you want the result more than your client does. This is a big problem. I have it. I think everybody has it. Your client comes in, you really want to help them. You know, they say they really want it. You start helping them and they get some success and then they sabotage themselves, right? And so you want it more than they do, or they decide to quit. You take it personal, right? Because when you get these kind of two things mixed up, you begin to lose rapport, right? Because, you know, you're trying too hard, which leads to the next level of trying too hard. Now, those three things, when you put them together, it just happens across the board, and you can't stop it sometimes. But once you become aware of it, because when you have those things, that's where you lose what they call clinical detachment, right? Where you can just look at things and go, well, maybe they didn't want it that much. You know, I can't force you to do it, right? I always revert back to like the 12-step world, since I've been in the alcohol and drug rehab world and teaching that stuff for 30 years. In the 12-step world, they talk about carrying the alcoholic instead of the message. You know, you can, and that's the same with us. We carry our clients instead of giving them the tools that, look, this will help you. This is what you need. So, you know, you're trying too hard, you're doing too much, right? And when that happens and you lose that clinical detachment, it can set you back because you have lack of confidence. And especially in the worlds of NLP and hypnosis, confidence is one of the drivers. You know, when you're confident, when you have that assurance, it can plow people through problems. Because when you're in a problem, you look for people that have confidence, that can help you solve the problem, right? That seem to know what they're doing, right? It's why you turn to power-based figures when you're in stress, right? You want them to take charge and you want them to have that confidence. Now, when people come to us as NLPers and hypnotists and change agents, well, we need that confidence that, yes, I can help you, right? But this also leads to one other thing, is that you got to know your limits. You know, maybe there's certain clients you can work with. Maybe there's certain clients you have trouble working with, right? And that's fine. Sometimes we think we should be able to help everyone. Well, I think the skills, NLP and hypnosis, can help everyone. But maybe there's certain problems you just can't relate to. You can't help. You know, people go through different levels. They go through skills, and you get different insights, different drives, different motivations. You know, I know some people in our field who are excellent hypnotists and NLPers, and they don't like working with smokers. You know, I go back and forth on that one, but they just don't, it's not their cup of tea. They refer them out. They're successful enough in their business that they have no problem referring them out because they have people they know that really like working with smokers, which is great. Because if you have a negative on the inside, which is what we're going to do at the end, a little exercise, when you try to plow through these too much, when you have some negatives going on inside, when we go back to our rapport, that's going to push out and affect your client. You know, if you don't like working with certain people, there's certain populations I just don't like working with. I'm not very effective with. I have my own values and beliefs and biases that I'm sorry, it's just not where I'm at right now, right? I can't help you. And there's plenty of people to refer out to. It's another good reason to maintain a good, you know, relationship in a user group like the National Guild of Hypnotists or IACT or NFNLP, where you could say, you know, maybe I can help you, but let me refer you to somebody that can help you with that, with those issues, right? And also, this also links back to, you know, it's real hard to help close friends and family members. You know, in the licensed world, psychology, social work, alcohol, and drug counseling, it's actually prohibited from working with friends and family members. It's dual relationships, and you lose that clinical detachment, right? So you can refer people out. You know, I've referred, you know, my wife to people when she wants to work on something, or my daughter, or close friends. You know, it's like, you know, I'm too close to the problem. I get perceptual blindness. Maybe I need you know, some outside help. So when you wrap those things together, they begin to also go to another level where you mistake a client liking you from respecting you. It's two different things, right? When you think about people you greatly respect, sometimes, at times, you didn't like them very much. But if they stood their firm ground, that can build respect, right? And sometimes we think in our field that our clients must like us. You know, I've heard it said, especially in the clinical side of it, you know, where if all your clients love you, you are not very effective, you know. And if all your clients love you all the time, well, then you're not telling them the truth. You know, this is unacceptable behavior. You know, you can't do this, you can't do that, you know, whatever it happens to be. I had a client once who would run late. And, you know, I was pretty lackadaisical about it, because when my clinic was really rocking, you know, it was no problem. I had multiple offices and, you know, multiple rooms in my office. And, you know, it didn't really matter. But it got to be a problem. And, you know, I called them out on their behavior. And I remember she started complaining. She says something like, you know, I used to like you. I said, I don't care if you like me or not. I'm here to help you. You know, she was a weight loss client. I'm here to help you lose weight. And obviously, one of your problems is you have trouble committing and following through on that commitment. You know, you've never been here on time. You rarely make the appointment that you set. You have to reschedule 2 or 3 times. This is unacceptable behavior. And until you're ready, I don't want you back in this office till you're ready to commit. Well, she got real mad, stormed out, yada, yada, yada. It took her about 2 weeks, calls me up, and, you know, I started her over, and everything was fine. But I knew I had to do what I had to do. And I didn't care if she didn't like me at that point, because, you know, it's like when you have children, you know, they love you, but at times they're probably not going to like you very much. You know, I remember, you know, now my daughter's grown, we had conversations. Oh God, there were times I hated you and Christina. I said, well, good, we were doing our job. I mean, that's what we had to do as parents, is to steer you in the right direction and push those things, right? And again, that, you know, I had to work on that, because I like people to like me. You know, but there are times, and some of you, if you've been in my classes, every once in a while, you'll see me have to dress down a student, because it's just, you know, unacceptable. The last one, I remember I was at the National Guild of Hypnotists teaching, and this girl kind of ran late every day. And I'm like, well, you know, obviously this is what happened. But she comes in late one day and kind of disrupted the class, which upset me. And then she goes, she kind of does this to me. It's okay, I'll have someone catch me up. I went nuclear. I said, obviously, it's not very important to you to be here on time. You know, plus I think they were all staying in the hotel or a hotel nearby. It's more of a residency program. And I just went off, and you know, she cried, ran out of the room, you know. And I'm like, you know, and somebody says, wow, you know, usually you're a nice guy. I said, well, there are times, you know, it was disrupting the class. You know, I have, you know, 28 students in this room. I'm not going to screw up your learning for one person. You know, Spock would say the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And I'm like, and she came back and we had a nice long talk. She was never late again, right? And that's the difference between respect and liking, right? And also, too, do they like you or do they just like the fact they can push you around? This is something we have to learn as, as part of that clinical detachment, right? And then, when all these things start to happen, then you can experience burnout, you know. And I think we experience burnout as change agents, NLPers, hypnotists, therapists, when we don't have passions outside of what we do. I love NLP and hypnosis. I always say it didn't just save my life; it gave me a life worth living. And yet, in the addictions, it's a big part of my life. But if you don't have passions outside of that, it can lead to burnout, right? And if you value yourself based on your client's successes and/or failures, right, then it can really lead to burnout, right? If you take credit for all their successes, then you begin to have to take credit for all the setbacks or when the clients aren't doing well. Many times you have to develop the attitude of, I present the information in the best possible way. I give you the tools. I show you how to use the tools. I help you install the tools, but you have to do the tools, right? And that pulls back a little bit, of I don't take over responsibility for your successes, and I don't want to take responsibilities for the setbacks. I'm a change agent. I do the best I can. But sometimes, as I talked, I think it was last week on passion, when you have passions, even outside of what we're doing, when you have an outside passion, it can drive you. It can really drive you back into your other areas. When I get in a play or I'm working on a movie or if I start a new book, it fires me up where I go back and I'm like, oh, I could do this, and it just lights me up. It gives me more juice to what I'm doing, And when you look at like the field of hypnosis, when you look at some of the leaders throughout the field of hypnosis throughout history, I mean, the Orman McGill was a magician. He loved magic. He loved hypnosis. He loved presenting, but he was a magician and a mentalist. When you look at some of the leaders in NLP, Richard Bandler's an avid musician, quite good. I've heard him play. He's good, and that's his passion. One of his other passions, and again, as I said last week, if you haven't watched it, go back and watch that video on passion, because, you can't really have too many passions, right? And they can bring more color to your life, more flavor, more texture. And then again, as NLPers and hypnotists, change agents, if you have some other passions, it helps build your story base. It helps build that story base so you can have some stories. Some of my best waking hypnosis stories come from theater, where I just do some conversational stuff with people. They don't have to know what I know. They don't have to know what I'm doing. They're nervous. They're freaking out about the performance or learning their lines. My job is to help them do what they need to do. And if I have the skill set as the director, or if I never co-direct, but if I'm the director, or if I'm in a play with an actor having some difficulties, if I have the skill set to help them, I can do that, And that's what makes this stuff so much fun. And that gills my passion when I'm back doing clinical work, right? And then it just adds a whole different color to my life. So, when you're looking at success, we can look at like, what are the 4 factors of success? 7 habits of highly successful people. We can look at all these things. That's wonderful. But if you don't know, especially in whatever it is that you're stuck in, if you don't begin to study, the people in that field, what do they fail at? I remember reading about, and it was pro football. A guy did a study about people that don't make it in pro football that excelled in college, right? And, he had to, of course, there's a physical skill set. Maybe the skill set doesn't transition to the next level, just because you're the best in this level, you're the best fish in this small pond, you step up to the level where everybody in that room is a big fish, right? What's the driver? What's the thing that separates them differently? So he looked at some of the things that, the people who make it to the pros do quite well. But then he went back and looked at like some of the high achievers in college, Heisman Trophy or, All-Americans that didn't transition to the next level. And he studied, well, what do they do different? What were some of the failure setbacks, if you will? And then when you put those two together, it's easier to build a trajectory towards success. because sometimes we overlook why do people fail as opposed to just looking at why do they succeed, right? Because yes, maybe the people that have those 7 factors of highly effective people, 7 success things of highly successful people, but they somehow naturally or something they avoid the 7 setbacks or the 6 setbacks or what sabotages you, right? And so we need to take that into account. And I know in my clinic, when I had a big weight loss clinic going, that was one of the things I started to look at. I know what works for people to lose weight. They need to, it's not rocket science. Put down the fork, right? Step away from the plate. Move your fat butt. I mean, that's kind of fundamentals, right? Well, we can help them change their diet. We can change their beliefs, their attitudes, and their values. But what are some of the things that set them back, And again, because I have other things going on, I'm like, okay, what do the people that succeed do in other fields? Well, it's those little things. And those are the things I added to my weight loss program that seemed to help. Then it spilled over into my addiction program. When I studied what worked in addictions, why do some people recover and other people don't? Okay, that's fine. We're studying that. But then I went back, okay, let me look at some of the people that are having trouble recovering from an addiction, that are doing the right things. Let's take the 12-step model. They're going to meetings. They got a sponsor. They're reading the big book. They went through treatment, but they can't seem to sober up. Well, what are they? Okay, they're doing the things you tell people to do, that the successful people are doing in the 12-step model world. They're going to meetings. They have a sponsor. They're active. They're doing this, but they can't quit drinking. So what's the difference? Well, it's the things the failure markers that they keep. Maybe they're keeping their old friends around too much. Maybe they think they'll be the exception to the rule, that they can, hang out with drinkers and druggers and be the only person that's sober. Whatever it happens to be. This isn't a thing on addictions. But, when I open my scope, I'm not just looking at success, but beginning to look at what sets people back. It changed the whole, my protocols toward addictions, weight loss, those things. So those are some of the things I wanted to talk about today. Some of the failure things, mistaking wide rapport and deep rapport. Wanting the result more than your client does. Trying too hard, doing too much, carrying your client instead of letting the client carry themselves, which can give you a lack of confidence. Also mistaking like versus respect, not knowing your limits, if you just, not just the kind of clients you can work with and the kinds you choose not to work with. Maybe there are certain times you're just not at your best. You need to reschedule clients. What are your limits? Be human, which can lead to burnout, right? And of all types. And then, I always link things lately back to passion, developing that passion. So I'd like to thank you for joining us on this little NFNLP members video.